Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for getting up early. And if you were up earlier and we're here for the workshop, my apologies. We're going to move on. My name is Amy Spain Duncan. I am an alcoholic. Hey guys, my sobriety date is March 6, 2010. I am sponsored in real time by a woman who is sponsored. I sponsor women who sponsor women who sponsor women. And that is an experience you must not miss. I'm always blown away that somebody would ask me anything. Yeah, that poor guy. But anyway, I have a home group, and they know I'm a member of that home group, and I show up for business meetings, and I hold a service position, and I greet at the door, and I move chairs, and I do whatever I'm asked. My home group raised me. They taught me to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. They included me at a time in my life where I felt very separate from everyone else. And they welcomed me in, and they made me a part of that. And I was willing to take the direction and do what was asked. I knew it was important that I was in Alcoholics Anonymous. And my sponsor would say, when you get to a meeting, you have to introduce yourself to at least 5 people. And so I would run around the room. I'm Amy Spain Duncan, alcoholic. At the time I wasn't married. Amy Spain, alcoholic. Amy Spain, alcoholic. And I would do this repeatedly. We had an old timer, and after about 3 months of me running up like a Labrador dog, Amy Spain, I'm an alcoholic. She said, "I know who you are." Okay. But I knew that I needed to be all the way in, sitting all the way down in Alcoholics Anonymous, because for years I visited you, I sat on the outskirts, I watched from afar what you had going on, and I really hoped that if I drank your coffee and I ate your cookies and I held your hand and we said a prayer, that everything would be okay. And it's more than that, and it takes more than that, and it took more of that for me, because I had passed beyond human aid. And there was going to need to be some substantial work done on this nut, you know. Let's see. So my family, real quick, I come from a long line of heavy drinkers. You know, we're Irish Catholic. We drink at everything for any reason. I remember my first drink was at Christmas, and, you know, there's a liquor table at my grandma's at Christmas. I don't. You guys have liquor tables in Arkansas, but there's a whole area that's just dedicated to liquor on the holidays, and you get out all the good stuff, and you got so many bottles, and that's where that was. And me and my cousins got together, and we devised a plan. We drew a map of the living room, and my cousin was going to cause a distraction, and I was going to sneak in, and we were going to get the booze, and then the rendezvous point was my grandfather's bedroom, where all the coats were kept at Christmas, you know, where everybody threw their coats on the bed. And what I remember about that mostly is that I was in charge, and I liked that. It was my plan, and I love the sneaking of it. I love that, you know, I grew up watching like Get Smart and, you know, all these kind of, and so we had this map, and you go this way and I'll go that way, and it came off without a hitch, and we got a hot Pabst Blue Ribbon, and, you know, me and my cousins split it, but I was, you know, that was my first drink. The first time I drank the way I wanted to drink, where I could get effect, I was in junior high. And before I get there, though, I need to tell you that I had all those isms, you know, I had all those things that made me separate from you, and I was the kid. I have like ADHD, but I'm a Gen Xer, so nobody cared. They weren't offering me a fidget spinner. Nobody cared. They were like, "What's wrong with you? You know, sit still, quit talking. Where's your homework? What do you mean you forgot?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I'm just running around bumping into things." That's what it felt like for me. And my mom was tired. She was married to my dad, and that was exhausting. He died with 30 years sober in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, so you Al-Anoners understand that my mom was tired, you know. But my dad's drinking was going to cause a divorce and take him out of my life, but I was a daddy's girl. And I just remember my perception, you know, what I'm picking up. I always got along with my dad. We had a really deep, just kind of incredible bond from the time my mom was pregnant with me. Like he used to tell the story that the doctor came out and said, "You have a baby boy," and he said, "No, I don't." He said, "I have a girl," and the doctor said, "I delivered your baby," and my dad said, "Humor me." and just go look. And he came out and he said, "You're right, sir. You have a baby girl." And it's because my dad said he just knew as soon as my mom got pregnant that I would be his daughter, and he just always wanted a little girl, and he chose my name. And my mom said, she couldn't hardly get me away from him, and he would just hold me and love me, and I loved my daddy. And my daddy drove motorcycles, and he would put me on the front of the motorcycle. My mom would yell from the porch, "Kenny, get her off that motorcycle," freaking out. Me and my dad, we'd throw caution to the wind, but my mom was always worried. And I remember when I was young, my mom would get us up out of bed at night because she didn't have an Al-Anon program. She didn't have a solution. And we would go riding around at 1, 2 in the morning, and my mom would say, "Amy, see if your dad's motorcycle's in the parking lot." And my job was in the back of that station wagon to scan for my daddy's motorcycle. And I remember learning to read in the marquee read "Kitten House." And I thought, why is she so mad? Who doesn't like kittens? I was confused, and I was hoping he'd bring a kitten home. She was not. And I remember her, I remember distinctively, a core memory of being little, and my mom was squatting down in front of me, and she was zipping my winter coat, and she closed her eyes, and I said, "Mama," and she said, "I'm just tired, honey." Because that's what we do to the people that love us. She was just tired. She got tired of chasing that man and looking for his motorcycle, and she divorced him. And I was mad. I was mad at her. She was my first resentment. My first resentment was against the woman who would literally take a bullet for me. So I'm having a problem, right? I'm already separated. I can't recognize love, and I'm full of anger at 7 years old because things aren't going my way. And I don't know what to do when things don't go my way, and I miss my daddy. My mom remarried, and my younger sister and everybody seemed happy except me. And I thought, is this what we're doing? We're just going on like he didn't exist? I can't forget him. I love him, and I yearned for him, and I longed for him, and I ached for him. And I would sit on the porch as a little girl with my bag waiting for him to pick me up because he promised he would. And then, the hours would go by, and my mom would try to get me back inside. I would lay awake at 9 and 10 years old thinking he was going to die a John Doe, and nobody would find me and tell me. And then nobody would miss my daddy. And that I was the only person in the world that cared that he existed. And I would fantasize about him coming and taking me out because I didn't belong in this family. They seemed okay, and I wasn't okay. My mom remarried. We moved to a little town. I want to tell you this. We lived in a cul-de-sac originally, and I don't know if you guys remember the green machine, but you could spin it. It was like a big wheel, but it had these handles, and I was the only kid with a green machine, and I'm very competitive, and I would race everybody, and nobody could beat me on my green machine, And I had friends in the neighborhood, and my mom remarried, and we moved to rural Indiana. We left Louisville, and we moved to a little town, and there's literally a sign there that says population 85. It's hard to not get noticed when you act like me, and there's only 84 other people. And there were no sidewalks, and I couldn't ride my green machine, and you had to get a ride to the neighbors. And all the other kids, their parents were farmers, and their moms were stay-at-home moms, and their dads were tobacco farmers or pig farmers, and they drove the school bus, and they farmed. And my mom was an executive at a bank, and I had this weird thing they had never heard of, a stepfather. And I was a latchkey kid, and nobody was waiting at home when I got there. And I would turn on Little House on the Prairie. And I would watch Laura Ingalls and her dad, and oh, that's sweet. And that's the way life was. But I immediately just did not feel like I just felt like I wasn't living the life I was supposed to live. Like somehow I'd been cheated, and I wasn't supposed to be here with these people in this town. And I always just kind of felt like things weren't lining up for me the way I wanted. I went to a little bitty grade school. It was a Catholic grade school. There were 8 kids in my graduating class. Again, hard to blend in. And my mom, I remember going to my first Holy Communion, and my dad showed up for my first Holy Communion. It was one of the things that he actually made it to. And as we're in the back of the church and we're getting ready to come up, and I'm in my little, my first communion gown, and I have my missalette, and I'm so happy that my dad's there, and I just can't quit staring up at him. Because he was so big, when you're a little girl. And the priest came up, and he said, before we go up there, I need to let you know. He was talking to my mom. He said, Mary, when we get to the front of the church, we need you to place your arms across your chest because you're an adulteress in the eyes of the church, and you won't be able to receive communion. Okay. I just remember thinking, let's go. I just wanted to cuss and flip them the bird and leave the church. Like, how dare you? We got to go. I have this rage that I don't know if it's the Irish. I don't know what it is in me, but I will kill you. Like, I got no problem. Like, I'm a rager, and I want to flip the table. I don't just leave. I'm going to cuss you out and bust the windows out of your house and, take a hostage. I got to do things real big. And I remember telling my mom, we don't have to do this. I don't want to join their church. I don't want their communion. Why would they say that to you? And what I couldn't understand was this woman who got up every day and went to work and paid for that Catholic education and made sure I was safe and made sure I went druggist to church every Sunday, that they were rejecting her, but this junkie standing next to me that just showed up for the first time in 3 years, he gets communion and I'm confused. And so, but what I didn't know was that's a church and that's not God. See, I didn't know that. So when I got here to you and you were talking about your own conception of God, I had these old ideas and old beliefs that I had to put aside because to me, God, I was like, Jason, I don't have anything to do with that jerk. Almost cussed from the podium. I used to do that all the time. I'm a lot better. I really am. I'm not nice, but I'm nicer, and I can catch myself because I still kind of got a potty mouth. Not like you beautiful women of Arkansas, but in Kentucky, we still mess up a little bit. I'm getting better because I always want to respect the podium and I want to respect the sacred ground that we stand on because I think Alcoholics Anonymous is sacred. And so I try to clean it up a little bit. So I'm mad at my mom. I don't fit in the family. And all the other kids aren't like me. And now I'm separated from God. I don't stand a chance. Right? Now, I gotta say, my sister went to the same school, lived in the same family, and she had an entirely different experience. This is not speaking about them. This is about this twisted perception. There's a line in To the Wives, and who reads To the Wives, right? But if you read it, there's a line in there I love, and it says, the strange world of alcoholism, where everything is just exaggerated and distorted. Everything for me was exaggerated and distorted. And that was my perception. That's what I came to you with. So when I finally got a chance to drink, I drank as much as I could, as fast as I could, and I was going to do that as often as I could. And I knew that. I am a textbook garden variety alcoholic. I have an allergic reaction and a mental obsession. I have a brain that thinks about a drink and a body that won't let me quit once I start. I'm identified in the doctor's opinion. Right, there I am. I'm so glad when I got to you, I found out what was wrong with me. And I always say this, and I mentioned it in the workshop. One of my favorite speakers in Alcoholics Anonymous is a lady named Mari G. And Mari used to say, I always knew something was wrong with me because people always said, something's wrong with you. And I could relate, right? I identified. I was like, me too. That's what they said to me, And when I drank, nothing was wrong with me. Nothing was wrong with me. And if it was, it didn't matter. I was able to just let it all go, that ease and comfort that comes at once from taking the first drink. And I was going to chase that forever. One thing that goes with drinking for me, drinking goes with fighting boys sometimes. Because I have that rage, right? I've got that anger. I got in my first fist fight at 9 years old. 2 little girls had been mean to my baby sister, so I went and beat them up, and then they were like, she's got a big sister, and I'm like, well, let's handle it today. Why wait? Because I'm an idiot, and I'm rage-driven, and so I went to this girl's house and beat on the door, and her sister was a lot older. She was like a teenager, and I'm in 4th grade, and she's in, high school. And I'm out there like, let's go, yeah, I whooped your sister, and I'm going to whoop you too before you come to whoop me, because, that's how it works. If you beat up my sister, then I beat up your sister. This could go on forever. Let's just end it. My mom found me in that driveway, and I remember my mom pulling up and trying to talk to this mom, and, hey, I'm sorry about her, and she's yelling, Amy, get in the car. Just get in the car. And I'm like, get out here, What's wrong with me? I was going to do that. I've done that recently, so just to give you a preview. It's been a few years. So that's what my mom's dealing with, and I want to tell you, I'm holding my family hostage, right? Because at dinner time, they're not talking about how was school, how was softball practice, what are we doing this weekend? The conversation is Amy. What are we going to do about Amy? The teachers called about Amy. That boy's mom called about Amy. Mothers don't like me. And rightly so. Because your kid's about to get in trouble. And my mom wasn't one of those people that thought I was hanging out with the wrong kids. She knew that I was actually the wrong kid. And felt sorry for the other kids. Because I'm going to spearhead us into something insane. That's the way. The rules don't apply to me, and I love danger and adventure and pushing the envelope, and it's when I feel alive. It didn't work out well. So I get a drink, and I start drinking. I start dating the boys from the public school because I'm always attracted to the outlaw and the outcast. That's who I am. That's where I want to be, because my dad said I was always looking for a place where my unacceptable behavior would be acceptable. So I'm not going to change how I act, so I got to find out people, sort at places, and people who act like me. And then I can blend in, because I could never blend in population 85, and I could never blend in with 8 other classmates. But, if you're rough and rowdy, I can blend in with you, because I'm rough and rowdy too, and I feel okay. I ended up changing high schools 4 times. We never moved. My stepdad wasn't in the military. What happens is I can't get along with you. And my solution to not getting along with you is to leave. I'll come back when you're not so mad. You look mad. I'll leave. I'll circle back later. Maybe you'll have calmed down. Get over whatever it is that's bothering you. But I didn't know anything about my mistakes or my part or making amends or accountability. I'm just out there recklessly stepping on the toes of my fellows, and then feeling the rejection of that and internalizing that and that self-pity that I'll never fit in. And girls seem to know how to do their hair and their makeup and match their clothes, and I didn't have that skill. I was kind of a tomboy. I was rough around the edges. But what's worse is when you're like kind of a tomboy, but you're not even good at sports. Like I couldn't even hit a ball well. You throw a ball at me, I duck. I'm like, but I could run. I could run track, and I did that until they caught me smoking, and then they said, you can't run track and smoke, so I quit. I'm never going to give up my vice. I'm not going to quit smoking so I can run track. I'm just going to quit track. Right? I'm not going to quit drinking because I do tragic and absurd things when drinking. I'm just going to find a new place to do it. But I'm never going to give up the drinking. Right? I'm just going to change locations, and that's what I did. So I was doing geographicals in high school. I ended up graduating barely. Apparently in Kentucky they formed this law that you have to have so many days attendance to graduate. I thought that was kind of a trick question. And also, honestly, I felt like I didn't even have to come and I passed your class. So maybe an extra award would be in order. Maybe you should put a star on my diploma instead of punishing me for being so smart. I ended up graduating. I don't know what my mom did, and I don't ask questions. But anyway, I walked because she's a little bit gangster too. And we just don't ask. I know she met with a teacher, and he looked afraid. But I ended up graduating in high school, and I got pregnant with my first daughter after high school. I was 19 years old when Sarah was born, and I'm in full-blown alcoholism, and she deserved better. None of us set out to be bad parents. We're all going to take care of our kids. Every mammal protects its young. And so would we. I remember in 2010, I was crippled with so much shame and guilt at my failures as a mom. That's the one that ate my lunch, man. That's the one I couldn't get over. I could hurt you. It didn't bother me to hurt you, and I felt no guilt. It didn't bother me to even hurt my family, but those kids. The warped lives of blameless children. I couldn't breathe from the weight of how I had failed them, because I had had a good mom, and I was raised by strong women who took care of their children, who cooked meals, who took care of jerk boys, whatever. I came from strong, focused women, and you were a good mom. That's what you did. That was your job. And as an alcoholic mom, I couldn't do that. I fell short, and it was crippling. Because we don't plan on that. That's never our intention. My mom stepped in, and she really stood in the gap with my daughter. So I'm very grateful, and that was fortunate for Sarah and for me that she shielded and protected her. Grandmas like Jason's, they come in and they stand in the gap when the mom can't, do well, and I'm grateful for that. My daughter would cry when I came to pick her up, and she would cry when her grandma left, because with her grandma, she got consistency, she got a sense of safety, and she got loved. And with me, it was chaotic and chaos and strangers and parties and ashtrays and beers, and that's just the best I could do. But if you said to me, you're not being a good mom, we're going to fight. Don't don't tell me how to be a mom. You don't know how I love my kid. I was so defiant and aggressive and insane. I started working at a bar, and I think we should all do that. If you didn't get a chance to do that, I am sorry. But I'm telling you, it's like endless liquor. And men, and I was only like 19, 20 years old. I was real cute, or thought I was. And that's when I realized that I could manipulate men to pay my bills, and I stopped being self-supporting through my own contributions. Yeah. I didn't close the bar down and go home and get some rest so I could get up with my daughter. I stayed until the after-hours joints, and I ran till 5, 6, 7 in the morning. I'd go home and sleep on the couch, and that little girl would get a piece of bologna out of the refrigerator and turn her TV on for herself. And I remember vividly just opening one eye, and she'd just be sitting there watching Sesame Street eating bologna, and I'd be talking about, just give Mom 5 more minutes. I started dating the bouncer because I like to fight and he liked to fight, and we just get drunk and fight each other. And I got pregnant by him. He did not want a baby, and I'm crazy even for crazy people. Like I'm next. Like there's men who, and thank God for you, but there are men who go, oh my God, she's nuts, and they're disgusted. And then there's men who's like, I know, she's crazy. Those are my guys. Those are my guys. Those are the guys that date me, right? That are just in it for the excitement, And those poor guys, because everybody thinks they want a crazy woman until they're bleeding. And then, I'm too crazy, It's easy to weed them out. So he takes off, and I'm a single mom with 2 kids, and I know I need to insert man here, right? That's what I need to fix me. What's going to fix it is him. And I'm lazy, and I don't like to look, and I was really kind of mad at him for taking off, so I started dating his kid brother. I'm from Kentucky, and they always think, back home they want me when I'm on the road to make sure that you understand that it was his brother and not my brother. Okay? We don't want you to get the wrong impression. It was his brother, and he didn't like his brother, and I didn't like his brother, so it seemed like it would work out. And we got married. I talked him into marrying me, because you can talk boys into stuff, and I talked him into marrying me. I told him how great it was going to be, and we were lighting the unity candle as Led Zeppelin filled the chapel. And I looked through my veil and I said, I need a beer. And he said, I know. But we didn't know. I didn't know that alcohol was my problem. I didn't know that when someone says, it was like a 4 p.m. wedding, and the day before, my fiance has to say to me, please don't drink before the wedding. That's not a normal conversation. And I'm negotiating, like, drink nothing or just don't show up plastered. You know, like, what do you mean? Because I drink every day. It's what I do. It's who I am. I put something in my body to feel different every day since I'm 15, 16 years old. That's who I am. We get married. A year into the marriage, he says he's taking the kids and he's leaving me because he didn't sign up for it, because this is progressive. So at 24 years old, I'm busting all the plates in the kitchen. I've got daughters that are hiding in their bedrooms. You don't know who you're walking into. Is it Jekyll or is it Hyde? Am I happy or am I angry? The mood swings, the insanity, the self-pity, the anger, and the booze. Always the booze. You know, we'd have big parties at our house, and, you know, the fight would break out or the cops would come, and the next day we'd be running around with trash bags, you know, emptying ashtrays, picking up beer cans. And we never thought, you know, drinking these parties, they're getting out of hand. I mean, that's the third week the cops have been here. We had an ambulance last week. Maybe we should slow down. We don't think that. We think, you know what it is? Jimmy. We should never invite Jimmy back. He starts trouble every time he's here. And Cheryl, boy, don't leave her off the list. It's never the booze, man. It's never the party. It's them, those, and theys all the time. But he's leaving me, and that's called frothy emotional appeal. And I was 25 years old, and I finally started to connect the dots. That maybe my alcohol was a problem. Maybe my drinking lined up with some of the troubles I was having. My dad got sober on my 18th birthday, and I thought that's where drinkers went to retire. I thought you drank as long as you wanted, and then you retired, and you went to AA, and you drank coffee with other old people, and you talked about when you used to drink. And I thought that was a good place for my dad. You know, I was good. He finally retired. And, so he had been sober about 7 years, and I called him up and I said, Dad, I think I got what you got. And my dad invited me over, and he textbook 12-step me. He told me about him, and he told me about you. And he was in love with you. And he brought me to you. He brought me to you, and he handed me off to a woman in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I got sober. I held your hand, I drank your coffee, I said your prayers, and I stopped drinking. And I had fellowship sobriety. And it was a wonderful thing, and I loved hanging out with you. I mean, it's just like the bar. We're funny, we're charismatic, you smell good. Like I said, typically there's some cake or cookies involved, you know, and we're going to do something before and the meeting after the meeting. And I love the socialization, and I love that it was the first time in my life I wasn't in trouble. You weren't mad at me. And I had been in trouble since I was 7 years old. Somebody was always mad at me. I had always done something to make you mad. I knew that. That's what I did. And it says, like, without even meaning to, just simply by existing, I seemed to upset others. That's not true. I was sleeping with your boyfriend. I was cussing you out. I was stealing out. But to me, I don't know why they're so mad. Girls are very sensitive about those things. You shouldn't do that. They don't get over it quickly. And then they want to fight. I'm like, God damn, I don't want to fight you. I don't even like the guy. Keep him. But anyway, but here I could get along with you, and you didn't ask me what's wrong with you, and you didn't ask me why. Those questions like, why would you do that? You knew why. And no matter what I said, you would be like, oh yeah, I did that too. And I'm like, really? It's so nice to meet you. You know, so I felt okay in Alcoholics Anonymous. I was never one of those people that didn't want to be with you. I loved your meetings. I loved the laughter. I loved storytelling. I loved everything about Alcoholics Anonymous. What I didn't do is work any steps or read any literature. I had my three-legged stool was kind of lopsided. I had fellowship, and I had service. They were big on service back then, and I did a lot of service, and I did a lot of meetings, and meeting makers make it, and that's what I did until he and everything gets better when you stop drinking. We stop drinking, things get better. We have 2 more kids. Just to recap, that means my next child is the brother and the cousin of my second child. Try to keep up. Then I had a little girl, and now my middle daughter, Allie, has a brother cousin and a sister cousin. And nothing wrong with it up here. I thought, what? We're in love. You don't like love? You don't want people to be happy? Yeah, we weren't happy. But we weren't giving up. So we had 2 more kids, and we bought a bigger house, and we moved away from the meetings that I went to. And I see this happen a lot, right? So we have a home group, and we have an area where we feel comfortable, and these are our meetings and our sponsor and our sponsees, and we're really happy. And then for whatever reason, we move or relocate. And the effort that needs to go in and reestablishing your AA community in a new community is daunting. And what I did was give up on it. I said, I don't probably need those meetings anymore. Jason was talking about the guy in the book that said after a period of drinking, right, we think we're safe. And that's what I did. I faded out of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I see it happen a lot. But 3 to 5 years, we're on fire, and then we get busy, and we get jobs, and AA starts giving us this beautiful life. And this life keeps us away from Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's what happened to me. I faded out of Alcoholics Anonymous. So I'm irritable, restless, and discontent, and I don't have you, and I have a fellowship-based sobriety, and I just took the fellowship out of the equation. I don't know that I'm doomed. The book says we are doomed, and I don't know that. I know I'm not going to ever drink like I did before. You're right, that was out of hand. I can concede to that. But what I'm going to do is, I like God, and God made weed, and I'm going to smoke weed and go to the 4th dimension. This is my plan. I hadn't read page 31, right? I didn't know that by every form of self-deception, I'm going to try to prove myself not like you. I didn't know that. And so I'm not going to be violent. Nobody panic, because people were worried, when I said I was going to drink. I love that movie. It's like, I'm not going to freak out like everybody thinks I'm going to do. They were like, oh, God, she's drinking again. I'm like, no, it's going to be fine. I'm going to be a hippie. Hippies don't fight. They're like, I'm not going to be a biker chick. I'm going to be a hippie. So I had my husband dig a fire pit. I planted a garden. I bought a guitar, and we tie-dyed shirts. It's all going to be fine. I'm going to be mellow. Instead of listening to Pantera and Metallica and AC/DC, we're going to listen to Joni Mitchell and John Prine. We're going to sing Kumbaya. Everything's going to be lovely. Except when I smoke weed, I get thirsty. My mouth gets real dry. And nothing works like a cold Budweiser. Nothing. But I'm only going to drink on Fridays unless it's Saturday or there's a football game on Sunday. You know where this is going. He and I end up divorced. When we talk about alcohol being a subtle foe, it's insidious. Right? You're the last one to know you're in trouble. I'm going to say one small little bad word, only in a quote. I had a friend that said, in Alcoholics Anonymous, you're the last one to know you're knee deep in shit. Your friends smelled it a long time ago. And that's what happens. We wander out, and the people that try to hold us accountable and bring us back in, hey, you weren't at home group. Hey, didn't you used to do a service commitment? Hey, your sponsee says she can't get a hold of you anymore. What's going on? Those people, I can't talk to those people. I'm like, don't worry about me. I got sober to live a life. We get real defensive. We get real angry. We don't want to hear that we're fading out of Alcoholics Anonymous, and we can't recognize that we're in trouble. I can't receive that information from you. Today, I live a transparent existence, and I surround myself with women who aren't afraid of me. And they will hurt my feelings. They care more about my life than my feelings. And they'll say that was out of line, and you were wrong, and you owe an amends, and what are you doing over there? And have you been talking to your sponsor? And they hold me accountable in this thing, because I will walk knee deep into the sewer and not realize I'm there. But you'll know it. You see it. So I have to be honest with you, and I have to listen to you, because I don't know what's wrong with me. I've never known what's best for me. So I'm fading out Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm drinking. The fights are back. The drinking's back. Everything's full blown. And now I've added some side dishes so that I can drink longer and stay awake more, because I like to be awake for a long time. I don't want to miss anything. Remember, I live in a hostile world, and I don't trust you either, so slipping counts. So I'm going to stay awake. Jesus, so observant. I spent $400 one time and sat in a closet all night. It was a pretty big closet. It wasn't a huge closet, but it wasn't small. Somebody asked me, "What did you do last night?" I said, "Listened." I said, "For 8 hours?" I said, "For 8 hours. Listening." It's money well spent. Had a great time. God bless. It's insane. So I'm divorced, and we had joint custody of those kids, and I don't pick my kids up. I don't pick my kids up on Saturday when they're sitting on the porch with their suitcase waiting for their mom. And I don't show up. I can't show up. And when you miss the things you're supposed to be at, the shame and the guilt, man, how do you even go back? How many times can you say, "I'm sorry"? How many excuses can you handle off? So I would disappear for months at a time. And just like at 9, when I lay there thinking my dad would be a John Doe, "Dad, I want you to know that on my oldest daughter's 16th birthday, she spent the day calling morgues because the news said white woman's body found." And it could have been her mom. And she was checking hospitals and morgues to see if I was a Jane Doe. Yeah, it's kind of sucked. Those things, that thing I just told you, that demands a drink. Because I don't know how to deal with that. And I don't know how to live with that. And I don't know how to make that right. And so I have to take a drink. The book calls it blotting out the intolerable intolerable consciousness of my existence. Consciousness was intolerable. Seeing my life as it actually was and where I had been and who I had become was intolerable. Bill Wilson talks about 2 bottles of gin and oblivion. And that became the goal. That's where I had to be. Bill talks about nobody knew that would be the last honest day's work I'd put in for many years. I had lost that last job, and I was going to get another job Monday, and it was 5 years before I was going to have gainful employment again. What did I do in those 5 years, you ask? Whatever necessary. Whatever necessary. I lived on the streets. I lived in my car, which an alcoholic doesn't really consider themselves homeless at that point. We have really low standards. Like, you got to drop down pretty far to be bad. If I'm living, and this is before it was cool. People weren't living in their vans, you know. But I did. I lived in a minivan. I had a pit bull. I took the back seats out and put a mattress in there, and that was my home. And then they towed my van. That was unfortunate. It was a bad day. Everything I owned was inside it, and but I lived in a kind of a schizoaffective, paranoid existence, and I thought that if I went to get my van, they would arrest me because it's a trap. They're always after you. I'm such a big fish. They're watching. Nobody's watching me. No one is watching me. So then now I'm living on the streets. And I'm living pillar to post, and I am not self-supporting through my own contributions at all. And I'm relying on men and services to those men for my money. And it's important that I tell you that I went to Millionaires Row on Derby with a group of Sicilians, and I got a lot of money that weekend to sit and look pretty and help them bet on horses and go back to the hotel. And that doesn't sound too demoralizing. That sounds like a call girl service or a good business, right? But if I tell you that I got to tell you at 2 a.m. when everything was gone. Yeah. I was always going to quit on Monday, so on the weekends I'd have a going out of business sale. Because I knew you guys were going to miss me. Who doesn't like a crazy prostitute twitching? The goods were getting unsellable. You know, when you do the inventory, the unsellable goods, we were getting there. I was drastically underweight. I was insane. And oh, Lord. Yeah, I was on a slippery slope. I would spend 4 years homeless. 4 years out there, chasing the next one, doing whatever it took. I became, like I said, a little bit psychotic, definitely dangerously antisocial. Because I couldn't pretend anymore. Everything was dark and gray and black, and I couldn't smile or laugh at your jokes or play the game that we sometimes play when you're doing what I do to get what you need from someone else. And there's a dance that has to happen, and you're supposed to be, oh, you're so funny. Well, what a smart fella you are. And in my mind, it's getting real dark, and I think I'm just going to rob you. Or kill you, because that's how dark I get, you know. The annihilation of all things worthwhile. That's where I was. And I couldn't believe my life, and I didn't know how I ended up where I was doing what I was doing. That was never the plan, and I had every opportunity. There was no excuse for the life I was living. It was just where alcohol took me. I was drugged by alcohol. Alcoholism drugged me. I was a denizen to king alcohol. I had to drink. At 37 years old, I would shake for a drink, and I remember being sober in my 20s, and old timers would give the new guy half a cup of coffee so he didn't spill it on the guy next to him, and I knew that was me. I needed a half a cup of coffee, and I started visiting Alcoholics Anonymous, but I thought I was too far gone, and I also thought I was undeserving of this gift of recovery, that it was a gift and I'd given it back and I didn't deserve it, and a woman like me didn't deserve to breathe, much less ever be sober or get a second chance. And I was suicidal and homicidal. Right? But I kept coming to your meetings, and I would sit in the back and I would drink your coffee, and I would fill my pockets with your cookies because I was hungry. And you never pointed your finger at me, and you never said a mean word, and you just said, Amy, we're glad you're here. Have you eaten today, Amy? Come sit with us. And if you'd done anything else, I would have never come back. You clapped every time I got a white chip, even if it was my third one that day. You'd be like, look at her. You keep coming back, Amy. Cheering me on. You were my cheering section. And finally, on March the 5th of 2010, my dad picked me up off a street corner, and he took me to a homeless shelter that had a recovery program. And he said, Amy, please go in there and see if those women will help you. You're going to die. And something happened. That's my favorite line in Alcoholics Anonymous. Something happened. That's where grace comes in to cover the spread. My friend Peter from Florida says, my sobriety date is the day that a loving and merciful God interrupted my death. And on March 6, 2010, a loving and merciful God interrupted my death. And I walked into that homeless shelter, and for some reason I stayed, and I'd ceased fighting, and I did whatever they said to do. But remember, I came in, I'm not this feeble, gentle kitten. Oh, look at her, so broken. Now I'm wielding knives, like, yeah, I'm broken, what about it? Get back. You know, I was prickly, unapproachable. But some of you weren't scared of me, and you came up and you killed me with your kindness and your love, and I couldn't understand why somebody decent and good like you would have a minute to spare for a wretch like me. But you just kept loving me, and you kept inviting me back. And the greatest thing that happened that year was somebody put that literature in my hand. And finally, you had given me the manual. The book I'd been looking for, the instructions that I had yearned for in first grade and my freshman year, and when I became a mom and I didn't know what to do, and you had it, and it was in that first 164 pages, and you put that down my hand, and I became a scholar. I was the guy, you know, I would win any big book trivia, like at the homeless shelter. I was a big deal at the homeless shelter, not to brag. But I could tell you where things were in the big book because I just studied it and I highlighted it and I wrote it and I remember just opening it up to there's a solution and tears falling from my eyes just to read that. there's a solution, and it works for a wretch like me. And I got a sponsor, my first sponsor. I always say I don't even think she liked me. She was about this tall. She was a militant lesbian. And she stood up at a meeting and she held up that big book. She said, you get you a sponsor that's properly armed with the facts about themselves and this disease. And I could hear her, and I went over and I asked her to be my sponsor. And I called her up from the payphone to complain about something, or, whatever we do as whiny newcomers. And she said, the only people we're going to feel sorry for is anybody that met you. And she hung up. I'm like, well, okay then. The other girls, they had really sweet sponsors that brought cookies and took them on picnics and out for ice cream. And I called my sponsor. I was like, do you ever give girls ride to meetings? She said, did I ever take you to the liquor store? She said, your recovery's your responsibility. I'm like, God bless. But what she would do is I got to the meetings because she's right. I always got to the liquor store. Whether I had by hook or crook. I always got where I needed to be to get what I needed to be. And the book says with one half the zeal you went about getting your next one. She put that right back in my lap, and I got to the meetings. But she would meet me at that meeting, and she would always get me home. But it was my job to get there. And I took the bus, and I walked, and I rode bikes, and I did all that. Because at the homeless shelter also, to throw a, next level adventure in, you weren't allowed to get a ride from boys. Well, now I'm on foot. Because I don't know how to ask a woman for help. I need Tony to buy me cigarettes, get me a drink, and drop me off at the meeting. It's the only skill I've got. I'm like, nope, off the table. Self-supporting through your own contributions. With one half the zeal you went about getting your next drink. And then the challenge was laid, and I picked it up. I got sober, and I love Arkansas, and I love Joe and Charlie, and I am one of those people at that homeless shelter that used recovery dynamics, and I'm so glad they did. It broke that literature down for me in a way that I could understand and digest, and they were pulling no punches, buddy, and it was being delivered to me hard and fast and true, and I could hear that truth. And they would do that chalk talk, and they would be like, here's the problem, right? And here's the solution, and it's step 3, we're going to make a decision. What is your choice to be? And I was all in on this deal. But I'm aggressive, and I'm angry, and I'm still full of rage. I'm 30 days sober, and I'm at the homeless shelter, and I get up, and she said something, and I said something, and this fool said something. And I put up my dukes. I'm like, we can take it outside. She looked at me. She said, Amy, what's wrong with you? I said, I don't know. 30 days sober, and I want to punch something. Because everything that muted the noise and made life bearable was gone. And I couldn't catch my breath. And I wanted to hit something, man. I wanted to hit something. I wanted to hit somebody. I just felt like that. But I started working the steps with my sponsor, and we got on our knees. We prayed that there's that prayer, and I'm looking around like, does anybody see me doing this, right? And in that homeless shelter, they would have a circle, and the women, it's called community, and the women would tell you, what you need to work on about you, what they see in you. And I was 39 years old, been living on the streets for a long time, and like I said, just really dangerously antisocial. And one of those sweet little girls in her 20s would raise her hand and be like, Amy intimidated me in the kitchen. Oh, man. They tell me to be nice. I don't even know what that means. I am being nice, we had to write words, and I always got, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And I said my tone was off. That was going to parlay into many, I still do that. I still have to check my MIB. Because what I've learned being sober, and I didn't know this in the beginning for many, many years, but if I tell the truth without compassion, it's just mean. But I didn't know that. And so I'll tell you the truth, and I don't care about your feelings. And I was harming people, and I was pushing women away. And there were women that wanted me to help them, but they were intimidated or scared of me because I'll hurt your feelings. And I don't want to be. I want to be useful. And if those brilliant outsides, if those jagged edges make me unapproachable, then maybe I'm not going to be useful to you. And then this whole deal is about fitting myself for maximum service. And so that means I have to look at those character defects and shortcomings. My friend Pearl calls them my character defenses, right? They come up to defend me. They come up to keep me safe, right? And to make things okay. And I have to be stripped away from all of that. I did a 4-step and a 5th step. When I did that 5th step, I want you to know that I was driven to my knees in 6 and 7. Because when I saw in truth all the unsellable goods, where I had been at fault, the harms I had caused, I couldn't breathe, man. It was revolutionary to me. I want you guys to know, if you want to know how crazy I am, I had put my mother-in-law on there because she caused my divorce, essentially. Because mother-in-laws ruin marriages. And now this is the woman I had dated her older son, had a baby by him, then married her baby brother, her baby boy, had 2 children by him, and drug him through 10 years of insanity in a marriage, leaving him with 4 kids to go drink on the streets. And she wasn't very nice to me. And I felt like I'd given her beautiful children by all her sons. That's why you need a good sponsor. She looked at me, you know how sponsors look at you, confused. Like, really? So you don't see where you set the ball in motion on this? But she showed me a lot of places where I was wrong, and a new angle of approach. Don used to say that we just have to have a new angle approach. I have to look at this from a different view, and it drove me to my knees in 6 and 7. And in 6 and 7, I had a spiritual experience. I honestly and earnestly wanted God to take away the willingness was there. And for the first time in my life, I think I knew that I really was powerless to change me. And that I needed to change. So I surrendered that to God, and I had a spiritual experience. It wasn't there's not words for it, but something happened. God is real, and AA works. And then I got busy in 8 and 9 making my amends, and I meant that. And they said, keep doing what you're doing, and my sponsor made me write down everything I was doing. It's a program of action. You know, I had my daughter, my youngest daughter was in therapy a few years after I got sober, and the therapist said, you know, Grace, do you worry that your mom will relapse? And Grace looked at her in that defiant teenage way and said, my mom won't relapse. And she said, oh, honey, the odds of, statistically we know, and with alcoholism, there's relapse or return to use. That's what they like to call it, clinical return to use. Do you worry about that? And in her defiant way, my daughter said, my mom won't relapse because you don't see what she does. Not you don't hear what she says or she promised me she wouldn't. My daughter trusted my sobriety because she was watching my feet. She was watching my feet. She was watching me show up at my home group and drop fist steps in the living room and get on my knees and pray and be on the phone with sponsees and being sponsored. It was no more about what I said or what those empty promises that I made, that I was not trustworthy. But she could trust my feet. And she said, my mom won't relapse. You don't see what she does. And I do those things because when I made that amends, they said, keep doing what you're doing. And my sponsor asked me, did they say how long? We didn't really get into that. I don't know. So I do the same things to stay sober that I did to get sober because I promised those kids that I would keep doing what I do. And I never want to be the woman that used to have 10 years or used to have 12 years. Or God forbid, I'm the woman that used to have 25, and I've seen all of those things happen in Alcoholics Anonymous. I stay on the firing line. I still am blessed with the gift of desperation for this program. I love what we do here. This is the greatest show on earth. I've won the lottery by being with you and getting to be sober and for being useful once more. And it's not always, things happen. Life gets lifey. I got sober and my 2 youngest were entering puberty at the same time. Ooh-wee. They're crazy. I'm crazy. We don't know what's going to happen next. My daughter's slamming doors, and I don't like to be challenged. I'm a bully and I'm an intimidator. And I remember one day it was Mother's Day. was Mother's Day, and I was 2 years sober, and you know how hard you work for those first 2 years. How scared you are, and you don't know if it's going to work out, and you want to be sober, and you want to be acceptable. But these people, they're still hurt, and they still got a lot of things they got to work out, and they're not working a program, and it's on you. And that little girl finally trusted my sobriety, so it was her turn to be mean. Right? Because you don't want to upset Mom, and you don't want Mom to leave, and so you walk on eggshells. But she finally trusted me and you enough that she got to be hurt, and she got to be mean, and she is my daughter, and she unleashed on me on Mother's Day, 2 years sober. And I went to grab her up and beat her like a stepchild. I swear to God, you're not going to talk to me that way. Like I am getting ready to snatch this little girl. And as I reached out for her, I heard something say, Don't do something you can't undo. And I dropped my hand and I got in my car and I sped away. And the pain, the way it hurt me, she had punched me in my gut. She said, why'd you even come back? Why don't you leave us alone? I called my sponsor. And she said, you still can't drink. I was like, God damn. Yeah. There's a lot of healing that had to take place. I had to stand in my truth, and I had to keep moving in this thing. I had to act as if a good mother would, and I was able to set some boundaries, and I was able to say, this is what we're going to do and we're not going to do, but I didn't have to get violent. I didn't have to intimidate and bully my children the way I want to intimidate and bully everybody. I got to introduce them to a new mom that you taught me to be, and I wasn't the mom that they had to hide in the closet from anymore. Right? I mean, they still don't mess with me too much. They're like, oh, God. Actually, now they want it. Like, they get in trouble. My daughter has having a situation with a baby daddy, and she's like, you know, Mom, if you had to, do you think you could, I said, I'll have to ask my sponsor. Because when I first got sober, that sponsor said, you got anything going on out there that's going to pull you out of recovery or cause you to leave this program? I said, no, I got a situation, but it's being handled. She said, what do you mean? I said, well, my daughter's got this boyfriend, and they just had a baby, and he's dangerous, and so I'm going to have that taken care of. She said, oh. She said, hold on. She said, you can't hurt anybody and stay sober. I said, I'm not going to hurt anybody. I'm going to be here with 200 other women. That works out well for me. She says, no, you can't have anything to do with anybody getting hurt and stay sober. And I remember clear as day looking at her and thinking, maybe you can't. I'm going to sleep better knowing that problem's solved, Like I'm judge, jury, and executioner. I don't value life. I don't know what it means to be connected. I judge, you're good and you're bad and you deserve to live and you don't. I don't see us all as God's children equally. I don't recognize that there's a bit of good in all of us and a bit of bad in the best of us. See, I think that these guys, they don't get to be here and I get to make that decision. I prayed the prayer, in the back of the book, and it was much longer than 2 weeks. It took like 8 months. And then he went to jail, and I was like, God, put him in prison. Very good. That'll work. And this guy got out of prison, and he did good for a while, because we can all do good for a while, and then he started doing bad again, and now there's a situation, and that grandbaby's 14, and we had to get emergency custody, and we had to take her into hiding where he couldn't find her. I called my sponsor. I said, I think God's giving me another shot at this. Yeah. When I talk about this God that I surrender to, these hands that hold me, this universal source, the spirit of the universe, where I'm safe and kept, where's my faith? Where's my faith? Is that God big enough to protect my granddaughter and my daughter? Can I surrender to that and do the next right thing, or am I going to take that back? I mean, these are tough questions, guys. This is talking about when the rubber meets the road. I'm talking about the acid test. I'm talking about when you're not sure if God really got this. Maybe I should take back over, right? I didn't do anything. He's still alive. Don't worry. My daughter texted me, though, because she was scared, too. And she said, Mama, what are we going to do? What if something happens? And I said, baby, we're going to give the courts first swing at this. And I'm going to trust God and clean house and help somebody. Because it's what you told me to do, and it's all I know to do. I got to stand in that truth. My dad died when I was 10 years sober. It took the breath out of my body. It was the first time I'd felt grief, and man, I missed that man. He was my biggest fan. Buddy, we were inseparable. We'd go everywhere together. We'd go to meetings together all week. He stayed with me. We'd go to conferences. He loved being with you, and I loved being with him. And we got that opportunity to heal our relationship and have that relationship that this little girl always wanted. The last 10 years of his life and the first 10 years of my sobriety. And it was a beautiful thing. And I thank you for that. You gave me my dad back, and then you saved me so that me and him could have that time and heal. I still didn't like my mom. I never got along with my mom. I knew that I never lived up to her opinion, and I always felt judged by my mother because she was good and I was bad, and I didn't know how to be good, and all I knew how to do was be bad, and she wasn't bad. She was a good woman. And I always felt this separation. And at 3 years sober, my sponsor said, you're going to start calling your mom every Sunday and ask her how she's doing. I'm like, well, that's going to be weird. And it was, because I called her and she was like, this is weird. Yeah, Mom, I'm just calling to see how you're doing. If you need anything, can I help you out with anything? You know, a year of doing that, and the conversations got easier, and they went from Sunday to Wednesday, and then I was visiting, and my mom was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. And she wanted me to go to the doctor with her. She wanted me to stay at the house with her. She felt better when I was there. My middle daughter said, Mom, did you ever think you'd be the sane one? I said, nobody saw it coming. Couldn't have wrote that. Like nobody saw it. But I'm who people want to talk to. And I thought, well, we should go ask Amy. And I'm like, this is bizarro, man. So we get through these things in life, and we just keep moving forward, man. And all I know to do is to trust God, clean house, and help somebody. It's that simple. I keep returning to you. I just keep returning to you, and you keep welcoming me in. And all my warts, right? My friend Pearl says, Alcoholics Anonymous loves me in my totality. Every part of me. The bristly part, the insane part, the goofy part, right? The humble part, the thankful part. You love me in my totality. And it's the only place I've ever found in this world where that happens. I love Alcoholics Anonymous. I love the way we love each other. I love that this is the greatest show on earth, and I got a front row seat. But I got to be in my seat or I'll miss the show. I got to be here. Things are good at home. I was asked to be special person day at school by my 6-year-old granddaughter because I'm her favorite special person. Yeah, she'll call me up and she'll say, this family's on my nerves. And I'm like, they're on your nerves? She goes, yeah, they're rude. I said, they're being rude to you? She said, yeah, can you come get me? And I rush over, you know, we go out for ice cream and hang out. My daughter's like, you're ridiculous, Mom. I'm like, well, quit being rude to her. I don't know what to tell you. She won't have to call me so much, you know. But I'm Grandma Amy, and they know they can trust me, and they know they can rely on me. They know I'm going to be where I say I'm going to be when I say I'm going to be there, and I'm going to do what I said I'm going to do. I can be honest today, and I can be dependable, and that's a gift of Alcoholics Anonymous. Most importantly, I can love, and I can be loved. I can allow you to love me. You know, Jason talked about it last night, just feeling like nobody in the world would really love me, and if you knew me, you wouldn't love me. And Alcoholics Anonymous, I get to be my most authentic self. And some of you like me and some of you don't, and that's okay. Because for once, I'm okay with me. I'm a work in progress. We're all a work in progress. We all have a right to be here. We can work shoulder to shoulder. I hate division in Alcoholics Anonymous. Unity is so important to our groups and to getting along. Principles before personalities. You know, we carry this message. This thing we do changes and saves lives. Millions of people around the world. That is sacred, and we are responsible. Thank you.